All right. So 6.3 trig identities. We skipped 6.3 back in chapter 6 because in my mind it's more applicable to chapter 7. Okay, so we skipped it. Now we're just going to add this one section in to your chapter 7 stuff. Okay, so the concept that you need to understand is that sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Okay, so sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Okay, you need to memorize that. I'm going to show you how it works, okay, math-wise how it works. You don't need to know math-wise how it works, but it's kind of a taste of what you're probably going to see in your math class in college, okay? In college, they like to show you how things work, whether you care about it or not, okay? And typically when they show you how it works, it's just to mess you up, in my opinion. But here's how it works. So, for example, if we're talking about these unit circle things, we've been drawing triangles, correct? You don't have to write this down. Okay? I'm just showing you how it works for people that end up going further in math. Okay? So we've been dealing with triangles with this unit circle, correct? And the length of this side of the triangle is x. It's how far you went over, correct? The length of this part of the triangle is y. It's how far you went up, right? And this side is your hypotenuse, correct? Is everyone okay with that part? And so with right triangles, we know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Is everyone okay with that concept? Yep? All right. So then what we can do is if we want to get this side to equal 1 to match this first Pythagorean theorem, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, we can just divide everything by h squared. So now we have x squared over h squared plus y squared over h squared equaling the number 1, which is our goal to proving this being true. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, so we just divided by h squared so we could get 1, so we can get one step closer to what this is. Okay, so then my question for you is x over h, what does that equal to in terms of trig? That's cosine, right? Does everyone see that? It's adjacent over your hypotenuse. Is everyone okay with that? Which means that x over h is cosine of x, but then since they're both squared, cosine of x would be squared. Y over h is opposite over hypotenuse. Isn't that sine? And so that is where the sine squared comes from. And it equals 1. So that's the proof of it. You're going to see that a lot in college. Okay? You never usually have to prove in college unless you go into Calc 1 through 4. Okay? You become a math major or a engineering major, you typically have to go through Calc 4. Okay? But that is how it works. Okay, that is why this is true. Is because for every triangle you can create, it follows this setup. So then the question becomes, well, how do we know these are true? And the way that we know these are true is they end up saying, okay, well, if I can divide by this h squared to make that equal 1, I could also divide everything by cosine squared. Okay? Cosine squared over cosine squared is 1, plus sine over cosine is tan squared of x. Okay? Sine over cosine is tangent. The squareds combine to make tan squared. 1 over cosine is secant, so then this is secant squared of x. And that's how they come up with that second one. They come up with the third one because they take this and instead of dividing by cosine, they divide everything by sine. Okay? So more fun facts you don't need to know. You need to make sure you have these 3 memorized. Okay? I have them memorized. You need to have them memorized. Okay? So right now, highlight it, circle it, star it. You need to memorize those.
So all those are technically equal, right, John?
They're all equal. Okay, you get these two by dividing this one by sine or by the cosine. Okay? Questions on that so far? Then, it used to be that I didn't print these off, but I printed them off for you. So this is another list of what you need to know. These three are the ones from above, right? Okay? You need to know that tan is sine over cosine. You need to know cotangent is cosine over sine then. They're reciprocals of each other. Okay? You need to know that cosecant is 1 over sine. Secant is 1 over cosine. And cotangent is 1 over tan. Actually, that's one that you probably will not use a whole lot. Okay, you might, but that's one where it's kind of iffy on using it. Secant goes with cosine. Cosecant goes with sine. And secant and cosecant kind of go together, and that they were in that third column that we always talked about. Or that second column. Yep. Yep. Pretty much. Yep.
So these are the ones that you need to have the test.
These are the ones you need to have memorized because I have them memorized. Okay. The list that we're going to get to is going to be like later on in the chapter. We'll get to a list that I don't have them memorized. Okay. So you don't need to have them memorized. Okay. But for the CLEP test, you will need to know them. Okay. This grouping I did, but my teacher also said if she didn't have them memorized, I didn't have to have them memorized. So, yes. It'll take us about 2 more weeks. So,
Are we getting notes on this test? Or
next
what?
week and the week after. But Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, it's the same concept. We just do it over and over to get it in your head. And that concept will really get those ones you need to have memorized in your head. Okay? So anyways, today this is what your problems are going to look like. Okay? You have 1 over cosecant squared of 35 plus cosine squared of 35. You need to find what the value of each of these is. Okay? So we're going to start with this 1 over cosecant squared. What is 1 over cosecant equal to?
Sine.
It's equal to sine squared. So this is actually sine squared of 35 degrees plus cosine squared of 35 degrees. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals? 1. Okay? What that... So cosecant is 1 over sine. Sine is also 1 over cosecant.
And you just then put the 1 on top again?
So sine is equal to 1 over cosecant. So I have 1 over cosecant. So I can change that to sine. And then since it's squared here, it has to be squared here. Okay? Now, sine squared of any number plus cosine squared of that same number equals 1. So if you see sine squared of a number plus cosine squared of that same number, it ends up equaling 1. Yes?
Are those numbers ever going to be different?
They should not be. If they are, let me know. We'll take that one off or I'll go over it. Okay? Other questions?
So this isn't going to be multiple choice question?
No. On the test? On the test, this would not be multiple choice on the CLEP test. This will not be on your CLEP test, though. It's not on the algebra one.
What about the normal test?
Take
The what?
Are we taking like a normal end of the chapter test on this one?
This one would not be multiple choice. Okay? So on this next one, you have cosine over sine. If you have cosine over sine, What is that equal to?
Wait, so we're done with that question?
Yeah, you're done with that question. Cosine over sine is equal to what? Cotangent. So this is going to be cotangent of pi over 3 minus cotangent of pi over 3. What does that equal? 0. So
How do you get 0?
it's like 1 minus 1 essentially. They're the same thing minus the same thing. So your answers today, you should be able to simplify into something a lot nicer than what you start with, okay? Make sure you keep this list here kind of in front of you because in my opinion, you probably don't know them well enough yet to be able to connect what these mean. And then you may also want to write below, like I wrote this sine, that cosine of theta equals 1 over secant of theta, and that tan of theta equals 1 over cotangent. Okay, you might want to add those other two in there just in case you need them. But that's what your assignment entails today.
Go back up, please.
Just one second.